Hey guys, welcome back to How to Roll Dice. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be doing a review and walkthrough of this game here, Splendor by Space Cowboys. Splendor is a game about medieval gem merchants who are going to be attempting to acquire mines and trade routes and various jewelers to produce the best jewelry in the kingdom, and to then pass that jewelry off to the nobles of the kingdom in an effort to gain prestige. This game is pretty straightforward to learn and play. It only takes about 30 minutes, but it's a lot of fun, mostly because of how visually stunning it is to look at and how tactile the game components are. Getting into what comes in the box, but first getting into the box itself, this game has one of the best built-in organizational inserts I have seen in a board game in a very long time, and it's not even really a high-end board game as far as pricing goes. Most of the time when you get a board game, whether it be a $20 or $30 game or a $100 or $120 game, a lot of times the box will have little to no organization as far as how to put the game away and store it so that when you pull it out next time, everything's kind of in its place. A lot of times you'll have cardboard inserts that are a little flimsy, you might have some plastic baggies, perhaps one or two small plastic inserts that are kind of just generic in their shape and size, and that's about it. And it's really up to you to figure out how to properly store everything back into the box, and most of the time, like I said, that ends in it being a complete mess next time you pull it out to play it, which adds 10 to 15 minutes to the setup because first you have to organize everything, and that can just be obnoxious. I don't really think it's fair that when you buy a $60 or $80 or $100 game, you then have to go online and spend 15 to 20 bucks for an additional insert from a third-party vendor who custom tailored one so that that game is more functional. I really feel like that type of a component should come with the game, and with Splendor, it does. The game comes with a great plastic insert that allows you to properly store all of the chips and tiles and cards that come with the game so that it stays nice and organized, and I really appreciate that. I think that's one of the selling points of this game. Getting into the components that come in the box themselves. You've got these plastic chips here. Could be plastic, could be resin, I'm not sure. What I will say is these are not simple flimsy poker chips. These are made out of a nice, dense, hard plastic or resin. They feel really good in the hand. They're pretty weighty. I mean, you can hear they're not cheap. These are nice. You're going to get 6 different colors of chips. They represent the gold, diamonds, sapphires, rubies, emeralds, and I believe onyx. I'm not sure what a black gemstone is, in the game that you can gather. And the colors sort of match the theme of the gemstone themselves. Then you've got the merchant tile, or I should say the noble tiles here. These represent the nobles that are sort of your end target in the game that you're going to attempt to pass your jewelry off to or get the attention of with your jewelry. And then you've got these 3 stacks of development cards here. These are sort of numbered or dotted 1, 2, and 3, and they also have different colors. And those represent the various levels of development that you can gain throughout the game. So you start with some basic mines and some basic trade routes, and you work your way all up to high-end jewelers that can produce beautiful jewelry. And I'll get into how those work in a minute. Lastly, you've got the rulebook. The rulebook is very thin. It's only a single sort of fold open pamphlet, so a total of 4 pages, and one of those is sort of just information about the game designers, so it's really 3 pages. It's so small that while we were actually peeling the plastic off of things and getting the game ready, my 1-year-old took the rulebook and just tore it clean in half without even thinking about it, because it's literally basically 1 magazine-sized page folded over. So that gives you an example of how small the rulebook is. Getting into how the game plays. For setup, you're going to take all of the chips, these sort of nice little circular chips, out of the box, and you're going to stack them on the table where all players can reach them. You're going to remove some chips depending on the number of players that you have. If you're playing with 2 players, you remove 2 chips from every stack, other than gold. You don't mess with gold, you leave all those out. If you're playing with a 3-player game, you remove 1 chip from each stack, again, other than gold. And if you're playing with 4 players, you leave all the chips, including gold. Once you have those out, you're going to take 4, or I should say, you're going to take a random number of noble tiles. It's going to be 1 more than the number of players that you have out of the stack of nobles, and you're going to place them face up, again, where all players can sort of see them and reach them. These represent the bonus points that you can gain, or a means to gain bonus points towards the end of the game, and I'll explain how that works in a minute. But either way, you should have a number of noble tiles equal to the number of players plus 1. Lastly, you're going to take the development cards and you're going to put them in a way that you can sort of create a grid. You're going to place the lowest development cards with the single white dot, then the medium or the mid-tier development cards with the 2 white dots, and then above that, the 3 dotted development cards, and those are the best development cards. From those 3 stacks, you are going to flip out 4 cards from each stack. Those are the available development cards when the game starts. anytime that you sort of gain a development card, somebody chooses to buy one, you're going to immediately replace it from the same stack. So that's the setup. Everybody has their available development cards in front of them. Everybody can see what's sort of on the market for development cards. You've got the chip stacks and you've got the available nobles. Nobody starts with anything in their hands. That's a nifty thing about this game. There is no opening hand, there's no starting gold or anything like that. Everybody's just looking at the same board and beginning to plot and plan what it is they want to do to begin to develop their gemstone empire. Starting with the youngest player, that player is going to do on their turn one of 4 things. You can either gain 3 separate gemstones, and that has to be 3 gemstones of a different color. So for example, a white, a blue, and a red, or a green, a black, and a white. As long as it's 3 separate gemstones, you simply pull them off of the piles and you add them to your supply in front of you. You can have no more than 10 gemstones on chips at any given time. I say on chips because you can have bonus stones from your development cards. I'll get into that in a minute. But for the most part, if you're talking about the physical chips, you can have 10 in front of you at a time. You cannot pull gold. Gold comes into play with another action. I'll talk about that. Like I said, it's kind of a wild or a joker in this game. It can act as any gemstone. So, first action option is you can take 3 separate colored gemstones. Second action option is that you can take 2 gemstones of the same type, but only if after doing so you've left 2 of that same stone remaining. So if, for example, there's a stack of 4 sapphires, you can take 2 sapphires, and that's your action. If, however, there were only 3 sapphires, you cannot, because you'd only be leaving 1 behind, and the rule is you have to leave 2 behind. Your third action is that you can purchase a development card. Development cards have a cost in the lower left corner in what types of gemstones and how many of those gemstones they cost to acquire. And if you choose to purchase one of these, you simply take the number of stones that are required and place them back into the sort of table supply, back into their stacks. And then you take that development card and place it in front of you and immediately replace it with a development card from the same pile. So if it was a mid-tier, you'd replace it with a mid-tier. There's no shifting of cards around or anything like that because their organization on the board only matters as long as they're in the same row as that deck that they fit into. So that's gaining a development card. And lastly is reserving a development card. So if you want to reserve a development card because you like what it does or what it offers, but you can't quite afford it right now, you can pick it up and you can place it in your hand and hold it in front of you. You can also choose to take this action using the card on the top of any of the 3 development card decks. It's sort of a risk because you don't know what you're getting, but at the same time, you get to gain it in secret. You don't have to show it to your opponents, you just pull it off the deck and add it to your hand. You can have up to 3 3 development cards in your hand reserved at any given time. During your turn, if you choose to play a development card, you can play one from your hand instead of playing one from the board. The other thing is when you reserve a development card, you also get to take a gold token or a gold chip. That's the only way to gain the gold chips. And once you do that, that gold chip can then later be used as any gemstone. It can count as a ruby or a sapphire or an emerald. It doesn't matter. It's basically a wild or a joker, however you want to think of it. So that's actually pretty powerful to have. We found the reserve mechanic to be pretty useful because not only do you get to ensure that you're going to get the card that you want, and you can sort of do that as early as you choose. You can do it and then 4, 5, 6 turns later finally put it into play. It doesn't matter. You're guaranteeing that it's yours because it's in your hand. Not only that, but you also gain probably the best chip option, which is a chip that can count as any gemstone. So it's a really nice, powerful combo, and sure, there's a max of 3 simultaneously in your hand, but that's kind of a very fair max. You can do a lot with that. So it's a very useful option during your turn. Once you've taken your action, you move on to the next player. So starting the game with the youngest player, they're going to take their action. It's likely either going to be take gemstones or reserve a card because you won't have anything to actually purchase development cards with. And then you move on to the next player, and that player is going to take the same action, and so on and so forth around the table. Now, as you acquire development cards, you're going to see a few things on them that matter. In the upper left, you're going to see their prestige value. That's how many points that card is worth in total for prestige. Once somebody hits 15 prestige points in total, you finish that round, and then the game ends, and whoever has the most prestige points wins. So those are your victory points. So some development cards have prestige values in the upper left corner. Obviously, those are worth collecting for that purpose. Some development cards, will also have a gem bonus in the upper right corner. That's going to resemble the same image on the gem chips, and that actually counts as a permanent bonus in the form of one of those gemstones of the color and type shown. So if you go to purchase a card that costs say some rubies and some emeralds, so some red and some green, and you happen to have a development card in front of you that you've already purchased that has a bonus of, say, 1 ruby. That reduces the cost of that development card or any development card that you want to purchase by 1 ruby. So it is actually possible to have so many gem bonuses in front of you from your development cards that future development cards are actually free because the bonuses actually cancel out the cost of the card. And that's in fact kind of the goal of purchasing those types of development cards. Some development cards have a bonus and prestige, some just have prestige, some just have a bonus. But there's always going to be some reason to purchase that development card. So as you're building up these bonuses and moving further into the game, that's how you get to the point where you can afford the higher tiered development cards because they have such a high gemstone cost. The only way you're going to get to the point of being able to afford them is by having those bonuses from pre-existing development cards in front of you. Now, another purpose for those bonuses is to acquire nobles. Nobles have sort of an attraction cost listed on them in the bottom left, just like the cost of development cards. This is how many bonuses of various gemstone types you have to have in order to attract that noble. You don't count the actual gemstone chips that you have in front of you, just those from development cards that have bonuses. So if, for example, you have a noble that requires 4 rubies and 4 emeralds in order for you to attract them, as soon as you or any player has that many, so 4 rubies and 4 emeralds in bonuses in front of you, that noble on their turn, I believe at the end of their turn, is attracted to them. You also can't turn down nobles. So if, for example, there's a noble in play that gives you a prestige bonus of 4, and then another gives you a prestige bonus of 3, and before you can get to the point where you attract the noble with the bonus of 4, you attract the one with the bonus of 3, you can't decline that noble coming to you. You have to receive that noble, they come to you, and you get a bonus of 3. That's a bit of a bummer because you can only have 1 noble come to you at any point during the game. You can end the game with a total of 1, and that's it. So once a noble has come to you, that's going to be the only noble that you're going to get for the game, which is why they specifically say you can't decline a noble just because you want a different one. Whichever one comes to you first is the one that you're going to have to take. Like I mentioned, once somebody hits 15 prestige points, the game is over. You finish the round that you're currently in, and you add up total of prestige points. Whoever has the most wins. If there's a tie, whoever has the fewest development cards, meaning they did the most with the least, wins the tie. And if there's still a tie at that point, the game is simply a tie. That's the entire game. It's really not all that complicated. You've got your development cards that you can purchase. If you can't purchase them right away, you can reserve them and purchase them from your hand later. Reserving them also earns you a gold, which is any type of gem that you prefer. You can also take 3 separate colored gems or 2 gems of the same color as long as you're leaving at least 2 gems in that pile in doing so. And then you can, at some points, gain nobles who are worth additional prestige. Your development cards can be worth prestige, and they can also offer gemstone bonuses, which further reduce the cost of development cards in play. There you go, that's the whole game. I just summed it up in about a minute of rules description. The setup is pretty straightforward, and it gives a nice visual aesthetic to the game once it's all laid out. You've got the nice columns of cards, you've got the nice stacks of chips, you've got the row of nobles laid out in front of you. Everybody's developing their various trade routes and their mines. It's a nice game to look at. It's a nice tactile game because of picking up the chips and clinking them down and organizing them into stacks. There's a lot of it's subtle, but there's a lot of like addition, subtraction, math that you constantly have to be doing in your head, where you're like, okay, I've got this many gemstones of this color and this many gemstones of this color, but I've got a bonus in that color and that card costs this many. So if I pick up one more of this, all right, what am I going to do with the other 2 options that I have? Well, I could do a double pickup. Wait, that stack's not big enough, so I have to do a single pickup. There's a lot of like shifting of 1s and 2s and 0s around to just, small math to try to make sure that you're not over acquiring gemstones so that you can gain the development card that you want as quickly as possible, or is it smarter to reserve it and then you have that gold that you can actually use as a single gemstone? Is that enough to push you over the edge for what it costs? It's a lot of fun. There's thinking, but it's not crazy intense thinking, but it's constant thinking. So it keeps you involved. It's a good game. I would definitely recommend that you guys give it a try if you get the chance to. I am sweating thoroughly, so we are going to end this review. If you haven't yet, go on down below, leave a like, comment. If you haven't yet, subscribe. Make sure you set your notification bell to all so that you get notified when I post new videos, which currently is every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, USA. I think I have to say USA. I'm pretty sure Eastern Standard Time doesn't narrow it down enough, right? Australia probably has an Eastern Standard Time. Anyways, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good night.